we are seeing a lot of innovation. There's more that can be done. It really is a partnership.
How do you apply some of what is being asked here and say we can be your partner in solving some of those problems?
Welcome to CGI Voices, where CGI's experts share insights on the latest in federal government management, policy, and technology. I'm your host, Pete Tseronis.
Today we're here with Stephanie Mango, President at CGI Federal, and Gregg Mossburg, Senior Vice President at CGI Federal in the Strategic Operations Group. It's great to see you both.
Thanks for having us.
Great to be here.
We're excited to dive a bit into this discussion around technology and people and process, and looking at your bios as I prepare to pass the baton to you to kind of talk a little bit about your journey. I want the audience to know that I am super excited to learn a lot about that journey and your views on how the government is evolving each and every day of the week and twice on Sunday, but also the role that CGI is playing to help enable a lot of what the government's trying to do, not just here in fiscal year 24, but beyond. So I'm excited and impressed. So Stephanie, why don't you tell us a little bit about why you're here, what brought you to CGI, and that journey and the path along the way that really has influenced where you are today here at the organization.
Excellent. And why I'm here might get a little too existential for us, but how I got here is I started a company called American Management Systems right out of college, right out of grad school actually, and started out working on a IT help desk at the Department of State. My dad was a career civil servant, and I always knew that I wanted to help the government, and started out there as my first job, and I loved it, absolutely loved it. And 28 years later, I'm here. So a lot of things have happened in between. I stayed with this company in particular, with CGI. I started with AMS, that then was purchased by CGI in 2004. Thank you, Gregg. He's part of my memory. And so, so in 2004, and I've been here ever since. And I've stayed with the company so long. One, I've always been able to try different things. I am very similar to you, I'm a learner. I always want to be challenged and learn new things, and I've been able to do that at this company, and it's been fantastic. And so I've tried a lot of different jobs. Some I was really good at, some not so much, but that's okay. That's how you learn, and learn what you like to do. And so I'm here, I'm so excited. I've been working with the federal government for so long because what they do matters. What our government is doing, it matters, and I want to be part of contributing to that mission.
I love it. And Gregg, before we go there, a lot resonates with, I was in government for 25 years as a civil servant, and I worked my way up and got to work in a number of agencies, and I get it. I always like to say, you can't take the Fed out of me, and that's why it's an honor to do this sort of dialogue thing, but also I feel that passion, and I think the best part, for me at least, in these early parts of the discussion, are that curiosity you have and learning in the constant state is pretty amazing. But for the record, you are running civilian defense and intelligence communities kind of engagements, and I think that's pretty awesome. So your title alone is amazing. We're going to dive into some of the innovative business models and solutions that you employ and leverage to do what you do well with so many of your customers. And shout out to the University of Virginia, where you have your Master of Science and Bachelor of Science, and you're a PMP and all these other wonderful certifications. So it's great to see you.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yes. So Gregg, top that.
So I have a very similar story to Stephanie. I came out of school, JMU, directly into American Management Systems. At the time, funny story, the gentleman who interviewed me on campus was George Schindler, who is our global CEO. And has been with CGI his entire career as well. And so it's part of the longevity of some of the leadership here is part of our culture, and makes it a unique place, I think, in terms of how we've grown to trust each other and play off each other over the years. So I came out, I got my job because I knew COBOL. That was the thing.
I loved COBOL.
in 1992, because I knew COBOL. And I went, just like you, I went to the State Department and I coded payroll systems at the State Department. And then I discovered pretty quick that I wasn't very good at it, at the coding thing. But I was technical, and so I moved on to solution architecture, and pulled cables and set up servers and did those kind of things. But then kind of discovered that I like to run my mouth. and I had a little bit of the gift of the gab and able
I get
it. You can relate to that. and so I got more onto the business development side of things, and really loved engaging with our clients and as a consultant. And that became a real passion of mine. And so as I developed that, my career kind of took a turn into and has continued to have a bias towards growth throughout the years. But I, like Stephanie, have a desire to kind of keep challenging myself and trying different things. And CGI is a great place for that kind of mobility. And so for a long time, I stayed in the federal space, technical, but then business development. And then at one point in my career, my boss happened to be George at the time, called and said, I need you to take the job in New York, running the New York business. And that was a commercial business with a state and local slant. And so it was banks and states, not federal agencies. And so I got an opportunity to go learn that and learn how to lead that. And I had global clients. And so it was a fascinating learning experience and gave me a real appreciation for being on kind of the other side of the table, a P&L side of the table versus the growth side of the table. And then in 2016-ish, came back into the federal space, kind of always had, like Stephanie, a passion for the mission of the federal government. I have never served like yourself, but had a passion for the mission, which another interesting aspect of our culture that I like is that many of the people do. And so we find that kind of common thread through us all. And so I've been back here, have had the opportunity now to work with Stephanie and run growth basically for CGI Federal.
Well, I appreciate that, and that's, again, an amazing story. I was just writing down as I learn and listen. I've been out 8 years, just for some context, and to see how the other half lives, being called on for many years by folks like yourselves and having meetings and figuring out how can we work together, which is a big part of that trust that you are building here at CGI with your customers and have clearly over the years. I got to experience, since I've been out, that the real mission of government is not what the agency's necessarily doing, it's the sector they're supporting. And you mentioned the financial sector. So I have a large passion, if you will, for the critical sectors that are so part of now so much of the infrastructure law and the Chips and Science Act and the AI executive orders, where the things at risk are the things we use every day, and that's awesome experience. And I do encourage, jump into the government at some point and see how hard it is to do that side of the fence. But yeah. But I mean, it's like, I want to move the needle, but it's great. So thank you for that. Yep. So I do love, though, that you're in the process of transforming a sales culture, and this is again in your bio, but to a consultative lead sales operation. And I think that's really important, where in government, it's not about buying and selling, I tell people. It's about seeking and solving. And you seek problems, you seek solutions, you want to solve problems on both sides. It's just sometimes we talk in different tongues. So I appreciate that, and thank you for sharing. Do you have any comments before we jump in on anything I just said? Because sometimes I'll say something that sparks a natural conversation.
I think just to because you mentioned it is about the vocabulary sometimes, and it is about being a consultant. And the bio is about creating a consultative-led organization. And people bristle often. And I'm not sure if this is appreciated, with everyone. But people bristle often about being labeled salespeople, and they don't want the used cars salesperson, connotation. And so what we're trying to do is move folks in the direction of being the consultant that you're just talking about. I use the word seek to understand, or the phrase seek to understand, but teaching people how to be better consultants and learn and listen to our clients and understand the challenges and the opportunities that they have, and then come back and figure out ways to go help them. That people can embrace that, I think, much more than they can embrace being a salesperson. And that's really not the business we're in. We're in the business of solving problems, and you have to be a consultant in order to do that. And so I think it's obviously in my bio, it's a passion of mine, it's an important distinction.
Yeah. So if I may, I'd like to riff off your comment regarding sales. When I read The Tipping Point, it's one of my favorite books. And the first time I read it, it was, I am a connector. I'm a little bit of a maven. A salesperson. But when I read the definition, not that there's anything wrong with that, it was more about being able to storytell and persuade and convey the value of a grant in your case.
More about what you are than you
Oh
thought, huh?
man, I was like, I am something, no longer in government, so appreciate that. Okay, mission, your backgrounds. Every agency has a mission, and we know there's more than the CFO Act agencies. I think the Federal Register has somewhere over 430. And I look at CGI, and I've worked with CGI over many a year, where it's, I wonder if they know my mission. They probably know how to solve some technology problems, but they know how to, do they know how to map the technology to the mission? So, in fiscal year 24, the federal government's very focused on 4 priorities. And I'm looking at my notes here that are in the budget or whatever document you read, but they align with the 2022 OMB Information Technology Operating Plan. And for our audience, we're not going to geek out on a bunch of technological acronyms, but cybersecurity, IT modernization, digital-first customer experience, and data as a strategic asset. When I see those, thinking like a Fed is, yeah, I have to do all that, sometimes I have to figure out, but who can come help me with my specific mission? When you see those things, those words, it's very general. How do you start to distill some of those so that when you're talking to a mission entity, how do you apply some of what is being asked here and say, we can be your partner in solving some of those problems? Stephanie, can I start with you? Pick one.
Sure. You know, they are general, and I think it's actually good. I think the first thing I think when I look at those priorities is they nailed it. Like those are the things to focus on, and they are all tools to get us to the mission, right? We need modern systems. One, because we have expectations about how we interact with machines now that we didn't have 10 years ago. And guess what? Those keep changing. So I've heard people say, oh, we've been talking about IT modernization forever. We're going to be talking about it forever because new technology comes out and you want to keep modernizing to gain the benefits of those technologies to help you deliver more effective and efficient services. And so when you look at these terms, so yeah, there's IT modernization, there's the digital-first customer experience. Our threats have increased considerably, and so cybersecurity, again, similar to IT modernization, that's going to be true forever. And so that's just a part of our, has to be our focus. And then data is where I probably get the most geeky and passionate about. I'm very, very much a data person, but the data we have right now is overwhelming. Mm-hmm. I mean, think about how many things do you have that are tracking data on you, on your person right now? And all of us have those on our person. And then we have sensors everywhere. We have a lot of data. And figuring out how to interpret the data, how to make it into something useful, that's where the real gold is. Mm-hmm. We've got the technologies to collect it all. Now we need to figure out what to do with it. And so I do think these 4 things are the right things. They are generic, and I think they should be, because they're all tools to help us get to the mission.
So I can't disagree. I think they are the right things. I come back to the conversation we had at the beginning, though, is that it's our job, I think, in the GovCon community to have expertise in each of these areas, but that really follows the mission understanding. Our job is to figure out how to combine technologies in these 4 areas into a solution that actually helps advance the mission of our client. And so understanding that mission, understanding that problem or challenge that they have or opportunity, and then assembling the right aspects of these 4 areas to solve it is what's most important. I look at, perhaps the one thing that came to mind as I looked at the 4 of them, and I imagine that it's buried in the IT modernization, is that digital transformation isn't listed as one of them. And I think you and I have had this debate, right, about the difference between those 2 things. I think that, as Stephanie said, IT modernization is going to be with us forever because technology is advancing at a pace that we're going to need to continually be able to take advantage of the changes and modernize the systems that we work. But digital transformation, which was the buzzword a lot a number of years ago, is different. And it is really fundamentally changing the way you operate to achieve the mission objective that you're shooting for. And it's those opportunities I think that we really go look for, is the way, can the emergence of some new technologies fundamentally change the way the government operates to be more effective and efficient in their mission versus just automating the systems that they have, or modernizing, excuse me, the systems that they have. And so that's one area where my mind goes. The second is, I have a lot of passion around the digital first customer experience, the digital first citizen experience, the digital first resident experience. I think we're trying to say now, and in that. For years we've talked about it, about how do we make the residents' experience with our government on par with the experience we have with commercial technologies and commercial providers. And I think we're getting to a place now where, not everything's perfect, but there's a pace at which the government is moving that is more conducive to that. There's a pace at which the technologies have evolved and a confluence of technologies that are allowing us to do that I think this can be really this can be achieved in a much better way than we've been able to before.
I appreciate that. I just was eager to jump in because you hit on a word, confluence, I love. It means a lot of, Stephanie, what you mentioned with all the opportunity to innovate and transform. And again, we know those are words we're going to see every 4 years or every other year when there's a new playbook out. Transformation, modernization, and we are in agreement more so. I think that to modernize and transform and ultimately innovate, it doesn't happen overnight or with a tool. And with so much data now in a zero trust world, Gregg, you mentioned that maybe the shift is, and it's called out here in Executive Order 14028, which was the big post-colonial, oh my gosh, we have to start thinking of IT differently when our pipelines are hacked. We don't want to mess with that infrastructure, but it's aging. How do we start thinking about applying technology? But it says leveraging industry practices. Not so much the government has to invent it, but we, CGI, can come and help you or share with you what they're doing in other parts of the country or world. So I commend those comments, but also the fact that CGI has a global perspective on some of these stories.
Let me jump off.
away.
Let me jump off of that.
And then Stephanie, please
Oh,
jump
yeah.
in.
Sorry,
I'll jump in.
she
Go for
kicks me when I talk too much. It's okay, but I think that is critical. I think that we've seen. Maybe it's because we've got more commercial folks that have gone into government service. Maybe it's because the access to information is greater. I'm sure there's a variety of things that have contributed to it, but a greater appetite by the government to embrace what's going on in other parts of the world, in other industries other than government, to learn from that. And there are definitely innovations in things like emerging technologies like artificial intelligence and cybersecurity, maybe the combination of those two that are happening in banks, in telcos, in utilities, that the government can take advantage of and wants to take advantage of and has a greater appetite. So being a global company, having the ability to reach back into the parts of our organization that are doing that and bring those examples, and not just stories. I agree, you said storytelling earlier. I think that's a fundamental to being a consultant, is being able to tell a good story. But to bring individuals, to bring innovations, to bring technologies that were created elsewhere around the globe to the table here in the federal government is what Reach Back is all about. And so I think it's critical, and I think it's something that I'll be a homer for a second because we're here, but that separates CGI from a lot of our competition. But there's other global companies that we play with here in the federal market. I think that's just a very compelling aspect of our ability to bring value to the government.
And I think what's helping some of that switch of people being more open is viewing themselves as part of the industries, which I think you mentioned earlier. The government is a healthcare provider, they're an insurance agent, they're a bank, they are 100 different things, they're part of transportation. And so being in the industry really should be looking across and what's happening in other parts of the industry. And I think that's part of what's creating that openness and the common opportunities we have. Gregg gives me a hard time when I say challenges too much. The opportunities we have with the new technologies to move the mission forward.
Right on.
So let me ask a follow-on to, and Stephanie, you went there, and in light of this reach back, I think that's significant, and I think a lot of folks listening would say, well, we do that too, and we have bench strength. But I would say, and I would assume you'll agree, but that's what I was starved for as a federal employee is tell me something that's happening in another part of the world or at another state, local entity here in the United States of how AI or cyber, cloud, or data governance is actually making a difference. The storytelling, facts tell, stories sell, one of my mentors once told me, and I said, yeah, learn from that. Is that hard? And maybe not in the positions you're in, but let's take folks who work for you or like, oh, I'm gonna call on that account. How do you skill or upskill your folks to go, look, you gotta be that storyteller. You gotta be a listener as much as a conveyor of what we do. How are you handling that in your organization to make sure that they represent the brand of CGI, of this holistic, global storytelling organization, if you can share some of that?
Sure, I think you hit on two things. The first one was, is it easy to navigate that and to bring the stories from other places? And I will say one of the things that I find very special about our organization is our collaboration. And so when I think about my peers across the globe, I am in at least one meeting with them every week and talk to them on a regular basis, sharing some of what's going on. And of course we operate under a special security agreement, so all within the bounds of what we can do there. We're able to share with each other, and then because we have those relationships, we have in-person meetings. I know it's a little crazy these days, but we have in-person meetings across the globe a few times a year, and we develop relationships so that when we do call and say, hey, what's going on over there, in the UK, how are you guys, how's your government handling this challenge? We answer each other. And so they're not they're not just these blobs over there in other countries. They work with us, we work together, and we all have the same passion for the mission of our clients.
Gregg, that thing I heard there too is there's here, what do you do? But that doesn't apply to us here in the States. I mean, there's always that I remember but I think the technology can be applied to my mission. So that's great to hear that you can share, but also learn from one another. Gregg?
Yeah, I think where my head went when you asked that question, because I totally agree, that's a huge part of our culture is that sharing and collaboration. But to get, your question was how do we get the folks below us to embrace that? And I think it's all about leadership. I think it's all about kind of modeling the behavior that we want and showing the folks that work for us how to go do this. And in a very simple example of things that we talk to our teams about, and you've heard this before, I'm sure. You maybe even when you sat on your side of the table as a government executive have had somebody come in and ask you the question, what keeps you up at night? I very much do not like that question.
Oh, it's one of the worst.
What are
your pain
there's
points?
Zero effort that's been put into that meeting,
Getting ready,
right? Yeah. And so the opposite of it is doing a little bit of research, and being willing to be wrong. And here's what I mean by that: doing a little bit of research to say, I read some GAO reports, I read your strategic plan and what you're trying to achieve, and I read where you have run into some challenges. I did some research and I found where some other clients of ours have had similar challenges, and here's how, at a high level, they went about solving them. Would you be interested in talking to them a little bit about how they accomplished that? And I may be wrong, right? And you may look at me and say, well, that's not my highest priority. I appreciate you did that research, but you missed the boat. This morning I got called to Congress and had an answer to this question. And I may be very wrong, but I would wager that you'd be more willing to talk to me about your real problem than if I'd asked you what keeps you up at night.
So we've talked a lot about mission of government. We're not here to buy and sell. We're here to learn from one another. We have these priorities that every year, to your point, Stephanie, it sounds the same. Zero trust, too many devices, how do we manage it, too many tools and services, again, which is what I think is unique about what you've been talking about, bringing to the table your own experiences in the federal space and in the United States, but also globally. So shout out to CGI for that. But let's dive into trends, market analysis, how you do that, and maybe mention some of the things that are front and center for you. From a trending standpoint, Gregg, what are some of the technologies that excite you and you're studying today?
Yeah, well, it's hard to answer that question without starting with AI. But before I get into the actual technology, what I would say is what it really excites me about the current environment is the appetite by our government clients to try, to engage in proofs of concept, if that's the plural, and allow organizations to demonstrate the value that an emerging technology can have to the mission, before you go whole hog. I just think it's a far wiser way to approach these the evolution of these technologies is going so quickly right now that it's a far wiser way to approach it, to try it out, demonstrate it, scale it. And so that environment, I think, is very conducive to taking advantage of a lot of these. And AI is obviously the easy one to talk about. Stephanie's the data person. She's passionate about the relationship between data and AI. I'll let you riff on that in a second. The interesting thing that I've been playing with in my head recently around this topic, though, is the way that our government is going about AI and addressing this trend compared to the way we all went about addressing the trend in cybersecurity. And the pace at which our government has released guidance with this executive order around artificial intelligence is actually pretty cool at how fast it went, how fast they came out with some guidance. It's not overly prescriptive. In fact, it's not very prescriptive at all. It leaves open for each agency the ability for them to address the risks that and the opportunities that they see with AI the way they want. But it's very much a risk-based approach. And contrasted with the way we as an industry, I'm not pointing fingers, we as an industry went about cybersecurity, which was, we kind of knew it was something that we needed to worry about, but we raced ahead with the development and modernization of a lot of applications and then tried to tack cybersecurity on at the back end. Now everybody gets it, right? You got to bake it in versus bolt it on from a cyber standpoint. With AI, I think we're taking as an industry the right approach and getting in front of that so that we understand fully the implications and risks, but also the opportunities with artificial intelligence and go in a little more measured pace to build that into our applications as opposed to slapping it on the backside. So I think it's a pretty interesting way that we're approaching it as an industry, and I like the way that our government's going about it.
Stephanie, comments on that before I have to add a little bit of color and filler, which was amazing stuff you were saying, but I want to give you a chance.
Well, no, go ahead and do that, because I want to talk about data.
Yeah, great. Which, by the way, is, and I appreciate it, you can't talk AI without talking about, well, is the data trustworthy? Is it protected?
See, now you're stealing her thunder.
No,
I try to give her the thunder.
Well, see, that's what I'm saying. I'm moderating my part of this. But at the end of the day, Gregg, you're right. It's a very lengthy document. It is interesting because you mentioned it talks about a risk-based approach. I love the try, the demonstrate, and the scale. This is the opportunity to do something driven, and the fact that I think we're saying it's not a point solution. I mean, zero trust isn't a tool. It's a thing you have to build in, and I appreciated the bake, not bolt on. I hear secure by design a lot. Let's build the security in because, yes, while cybersecurity was something we all raced to understand when it came out and got certified and all, the threat and bad actors out there were like, they're just getting trained up on the stuff that we're going to be doing. And so I appreciate that you distinguished between the two, because I think this is a good attempt, and I think AI is going to be the new thing for a while. So, Stephanie.
It's going to be the new thing for a while. When we talk about data, I mentioned already about how there's a lot of it and we need to figure out what to do with it, and that's part of what AI helps us with. I actually had a really interesting conversation with my 11-year-old a couple weeks ago, and we got into a debate about whether it was necessary for her to learn all the details about history anymore. And she looked at it as, I can find out any of those details in 10 seconds on my phone or my computer, or whatever. I have access to that data. Isn't it just important that I know the event occurred in history and I know what we learned from it? Why do I need to know anything else?
This is your 11-year-old.
Well, that was kind of my answer, because I was like, I don't know, that's a really good question.
Good Will Hunting comes to mind since you've seen that movie.
Yes,
Go ahead.
I love the movie. And so it's trying to answer the question of, well, why do you actually need to, why is it important to memorize dates? And back to the digital transformation, really looking at things differently, I think the generations that have been brought up with always having access to information, it's a totally different paradigm. And she's right. And so there probably needs to be a transformation about what we learn and how we learn it, because I have that access. You know, we went to the library. If we didn't know something, we had to wait till the library opened to go find out. There's no concept of that anymore.
What were those drawers called?
The card
book.
catalog.
Oh, that's where I can find the book. You
catalog.
get there, it's not there.
It's not there, I'm so confused. So like there's all of that. So I think we need to, as we're thinking about how to apply technologies, we really need to let go of some of the barriers that are self-imposed based on our frame of reference. And that's where we also need to infuse some of that viewpoint into how we're thinking about things. Now, interestingly, so we kind of got through that, and then we were talking about how do you trust the information you get on the internet, which is naturally where it went. And so we were talking about, you know, make sure you look at the source of the data before you assume it's the right data, and maybe check a couple different places and see if the data all matches up. And so we get into a good conversation about that. And then we started to get into the idea that can you really trust what you see anymore, right?
It could be like a slippery slope. And
it is a slippery slope. I mean, now on my iPhone, I can click on my picture and it cuts the people out, and then I can go put them on a different background. So it used to be it was irrefutable evidence if you got somebody's picture doing something. It's not true anymore. And so the challenge of, well, what does it mean then if I'm not sure what I see is real or what I hear is real? Because we can splice together different audio tracks. And so it starts to get into really interesting conversations, not just the ethical use of AI, which is a piece of it, but it's much broader than that. And how do we in the future trust what we see? How do we trust what we hear? And then if I can figure all that out, then there's still the matter of how do I leverage all of it to accomplish what I try to do? And is what I'm trying to do what I need to do anymore?
yeah. And I'm again hearing this as these are the things the federal government needs help with. And whether it's this executive order or another one, they all build on one another. And every time you read in this one, which I've read more than I've probably thought I would at this point in 2 weeks or a month now, it references documents from 3-4 years ago about this continuous evolution. And it goes back to we have to try, we have to learn eventually to scale, but landing, expanding, and selling tools is not something the government needs. And that's speaking as a Fed. So let me ask you this one. It's meant not to be a hardball, but what can the government be doing more effectively, not better, when they have a chance to meet with you? Do you find that the government, with all this new technology and requirements, are being open to, how can you help us? I got to meet the mandate, but I want to go a little bit further. There's so much data, the cloud options, AI. How do you help them focus, if that's fair?
I'll take the easy one.
Okay, you go for it.
And then you can take the hard
All
one.
right.
An easy answer to that is talk with us. You know, if you look at the commercial market versus the government market, there's a 180-degree difference in how they go about engaging with partners for solutions. In the commercial market, the closer you get to a decision, the greater the amount of conversation that occurs. In the government market, the closer you get to a decision, the less amount of conversation that occurs. Because of the FAR, because of the rules, and everybody, we all want to stay on the right side of the rules, but it doesn't allow for the creativity and innovation that could occur with this kind of confluence of emerging technologies. And so finding ways, and there are innovations that are happening, there are different ways that different clients are trying to do this, but a greater appreciation for, look, if we have an opportunity to sit down and talk and better understand what you're trying to achieve and the barriers and constraints that you have, we can better put together a solution that'll meet your needs. And so that the communication, I think, is the most fundamental thing that we as an industry can do better in order to try to help the government move.
I like that. Stephanie, do you?
I like that. I like that a lot, and we are seeing a lot of innovation in the procurement processes. I'm excited to see that continue because, as Gregg says, well, there's been a lot of innovation. There's more that can be done, and it really is a partnership. We're all in this together. We're all aiming for the same thing, and so having it be a conversation where we're understanding where the actual goal is, we got a better shot of getting there. And so I'm excited about that part. Now, what was the hard part I was supposed to answer?
I don't know. I just took the easy one.
I think it was more, and you answered it, which is really, it was my bad. I was like, what can the government be doing more effectively to seek out some of that help while you're not seen as they just want to have a meeting and get together and tell me about the greatest tool. I know at CGI you care about the end state, the outcome, and maybe this is a good pivot to the people process technology discussion, and I hope if you have an exemplar, an example of a conversation might start with, here's how we can help. Even if you unearth the challenge they're facing, how do you convey that, hey, we can give you a tech solution, we can help you with the process, but there's the reskilling. There's the employing technology. It's not to put somebody out of a job. People fear some of the technologies. Are you seeing or hearing some of that and addressing workforce development in some of your engagements?
We definitely are. We're hearing a lot of it, and some of it, started with the simple RPA, right? So if we're going to do a bunch of RPA, then I have a whole bunch of people who don't have a position anymore. And the answer is that's not true. That the robot's going to do this part of the work. Think of all the great things they can do outside of that, and then how do we help people reskill? What I think, back to the what should government maybe be doing. There's a couple of things I think that are important. One is everybody needs to consider themselves in a technology job. Like we talk about how we're in technology and we're in consulting. Every field is now a technology job. Every job that we have is becoming a technology job. And so the need for people to not say, oh, that's an IT thing, we need to try to integrate with everybody. If you're executing the program, understanding technology at a high enough level to know what problems it could potentially solve or what opportunities it could help you meet, it's going to be important for everyone. So getting that kind of base understanding, I think, is an important part. The other part is we've generally had I would say historically had a narrow focus on talent and where we wanted to grab the talent pools from in the government. And I've been really excited to see some of the changes in, there's a lot of great talent, and they may not have the same degrees. They may not have may not have the same majors. Maybe they had nothing to do with technology, but because they're good consultants and problem solvers, they might be the best people to help me accomplish my mission, and they can learn about the technology. And so I think there's a reskilling piece, and then there's being open to all of the great talent that's out there in this country that's untapped.
I was a communications major at Villanova, and I want to be a sports broadcaster, and here I am, like, some people call me, hey, you're Mr. IPv6 from government days. I'm like, man, I'm just a technologist who's taught himself, and I think that's where, again, great point, seeing yourself as, we're all technologists, but being able to translate and map a capability that you have, or a service, or of agnostically, a lot of the tools you can bring to bear to the government to meet that unique mission is very special. So I appreciate that. And Gregg, I saw you writing a few things down. You want to comment on this workforce component?
Well, the people process technology,
Yes.
where you started
Yes.
the conversation, and again, where my head went was, we talk a lot and push our teams as they talk to their clients to understand that there are a variety of different levels of pain or opportunity that are being experienced in a particular client. And all too often we'll have our teams engage on a regular basis with one aspect of the organization and understand something like operational pain. Understand that I've got technical debt in my system. Understand that I need to get my O&M costs down so I can have $1 or $2 to spend on modernization. Mm-hmm. And that operational pain we're really good at solving for. But if you don't think about maybe going up the ladder a little bit into the personnel pain, the reskilling that would need to occur if I did this, or the strategic pain, which is the impact on the mission if I do this or if I don't do this, you've got to surround it so that you understand all the different levels of opportunity within an organization, not just isolate on the one that's the most comfortable and right in front of your face, to address the people, process, and technology aspects of how you really solve a government agency challenge.
Stephanie, is that a nod of let me jump in, or?
No, that's
100% agree. Okay,
he
great,
got
great.
it.
Well, I wanted to kind of riff again off of that because I think back to my many jobs of running a data center, and I didn't get to mention I was a ping power pipe guy as well. I was like, cable dude, I want to run a network one day, and I realized I'm not the smartest guy at doing this. I just like working with really smart people. But the evolution, and this is where I'd like to talk about maybe something, foreshadow, of what you're working on right now, a program, a project here internally in your culture, what you're working on with an agency that we speak in fiscal year tongues. What do we want to have done by the end of September 30th, and maybe just, share what it is that's driving you here at the moment, because this executive order won't be the last. Right? AI is front and center. There's a lot of activity around it, but we don't need another event on why it's important. I think we hit on some of that. But I will summarize what I heard you both say. This triangulation of people, process, technology is more significant than ever. Right? You have to have a culture that will embrace it, but also know that it needs to do things because it doesn't need caffeine that the human can. But I heard literacy, digital, computational, and understanding the value, which should be an incentive for an employee, government or industry, to be curious and smarter, just like the both of you are. So thank you for that. That was very helpful, and that's just a reflection on what you said. So, Stephanie, what's a project or a program, or one you got an example of something?
There's so many exciting
Well,
programs.
pick one of them. It doesn't have to be your top one.
I'll talk about our work with DHS around cyber and their CDM program, and really the mission of CISA to try to figure out how to secure all this stuff. And when you think about national security, that is one of the most challenging areas for us. The people out there that are doing bad things and thinking bad thoughts, they're getting smarter too. They're curious too. And so trying to figure out how to secure such a broad range of assets that are geographically dispersed, time-wise dispersed. When technologies were invented, we're still running some very old systems, and we're running some very new systems. Working with DHS on that particular program, I find very rewarding. Yeah, go ahead.
No. I'm just going to shout out to DHS and CISA, which again, acronyms we're more than happy to spell out, but I don't want to say the wrong ones. They oversee the 16 critical sectors in our country.
Yeah.
They're trying to do everything we've been talking about, and that's pretty darn cool that you're supporting that. And obviously the CDM program's amazing, and that's all about continuous mitigation. And thank you for sharing that. Gregg.
Yeah, I'll go internal a little bit.
Okay.
Stephanie had a good client out there. I think when it comes to AI, because I can't get off that topic right now, when it comes to AI, I think one of the challenges that we have is, many don't know what they don't know. The education level within our organization, within industry right now, isn't up to a point where we can truly envision and innovate in the way I think that we should be able to and will be able to. And so the education of the masses, if you will, is a big effort. And then allowing our partners who are on the shop room floor, one of my favorite sayings from a mentor is innovation happens on the shop room floor, that are out there every day working with our clients and can get smart in these emerging technologies. They're the ones that can come up with the ideas. And so I want to get them all smart, and then I want to enable them to try and play and learn, and then come up with ways that we can improve the mission of our clients. And so we're doing a lot internally to educate and to provide environments where people can try these technologies out and learn about them, so that we can eventually innovate on the shop room floor.
Yeah, again, the words like educate and literacy and training, they I think have taken on a whole new meaning. And again, I'm kind of on your side of the fence, and I don't mean to say sides, but like I'm sort of trying to be a consultant and saying I understand how consultants think now, and the Fed, you need to understand that it is that connecting the dots for people. But I appreciate that you're also you're informing, you're enlightening, you're storytelling, and we can meet the mandates, but we also hope that not just the federal agency's mission is being met, but those constituencies, to your point about like who's the resident benefiting, or the citizen, or whatever it's considered globally, and that footprint is amazing. So All right, like I always say, I wish we could be talking about one specific technology. Thanks for sharing some of the views on trends, and I agree, I think AI is one of those, and cyber is always baked in there, and who knows what the other one will be. Thank you for bringing up sensors and the data perspective. There's more of it, and the fact that provenance matters, so that was awesome, is awesome. I like to close with parting shots. We've talked about a lot. This is where it's not a hardball or softball. What do we want to leave with anyone listening to this who's thinking before they hit, I've heard enough, oh, what's he going to say? I'm going to start with Stephanie. What can you synthesize from today into, I hope folks heard this about me and CGI?
Oh, I was going to go more about government and technology,
do
but
whatever
okay.
you want. It's your parting shot.
So I was at an event a little while ago, and I heard a speaker, and I don't want to quote the name because I don't remember who it was. It was a government speaker, and they said, I have a pizza app that tells me exactly what's happening with my pizza, when it goes into the oven, when the driver's on the way. All the interactions with the government should be that easy and should have that same type of experience. And that really, really hit home with me. And so as I'm thinking about things and thinking about that citizen resident experience, what should that look like? If I go and apply for a grant, should I be able to see where it is on something that gets pushed to my app at any given time? Absolutely. We have that technology, we can do it. How do we transform those type of experiences for the citizens is where I want us all thinking. That's where we can really make a difference. And then when you bring that together with the idea that everybody needs to understand technology and identify opportunities to take advantage of it. So those are kind of my two things. And then I'll add a third one in. The need to be a constant learner. You know, when I present to every new class of people coming into CGI Federal, and one of the things I say is if you are not a constant learner, you probably shouldn't be in either technology or consulting. Because these are things that are constantly changing. The challenges and opportunities are constantly changing. The technology is constantly changing. And I guess what I would want everybody who's anywhere in this government industry is we all need to be willing to change and embrace change. Not just be willing, but embrace it. I'm not sure everybody is there yet. Now, Gregg gives me a hard time all the time. I'm maybe a little too excited about change.
She's on one end of the spectrum. Not many. She's out there by herself.
I get that. I'm all the way over here. There are a lot of people who are over here. And I think there's a good space in the middle for being willing to change and looking for the opportunities to nothing is broken and everything can be better.
I appreciate that, embracing change and understanding that it doesn't have to be scary and that there's opportunity to expand as a human being the knowledge and get to that in that hierarchy of wisdom. That was great. Awesome. Gregg, parting shot.
Yes,
I
you
know,
can.
man. Can you top that?
You did this to me twice in this conversation.
Come on, well,
I thought I was going to get to go first this time. Look, I don't want to be too cliche. I think I want to build off the embrace change and the words that were going around in my head. And I'm thinking about it as just from us as an industry, the GovCon industry with our government clients and all of the companies that work in there. We've got to think more globally and we've got to go faster. With all the challenges that we've got in the world right now, the pace at which we change and innovate and progress as a community here, the government community, has got to go faster. And it's incumbent on us to be able to keep up and push in some areas, but it's going to take both sides. It's going to take the government and industry to pull it off. But we've got to go faster. The technology is evolving fast enough that we can. I think it's our old tendencies, and it's embracing change and breaking out of some of those tendencies and allowing ourselves to go faster. I think as a country, we owe it to ourselves to endeavor to find ways to do that.
New acronym, folks, TGGF. Think globally, go faster. I like that. I'm stealing it and giving you all the credit. So, hey, it was great. I thoroughly enjoyed, and I was very, very honored and have been to meet you both and see you again. And I hope that anybody listening to this is pretty fired up and hits that that dials up CGI and has a conversation, because you all have a lot to offer your customers. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You can find CGI Voices on your preferred podcast platform or watch the video version on YouTube. Subscribe or follow and spread the word to your colleagues. CGI Voices, expert insights for federal decision makers.